the road was not easy to get to that place, nor was it easy when I got there, but it made me so much happier.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan. Today's guest is an absolute legend. This man is honest, deep, smart, insightful, a natural philosopher. I could have spoken to him for days on end. I love his kindness, spirit, and empathy, especially his positive mindset of wanting to help others. I really think this is a key attribute to help the planet grow and move forward in a great direction. Also, this chat will include the full video footage on my new YouTube page under Michael Kahan. It's new and it's still gaining exposure. So I'd love it if you'd check it out, subscribe and share the podcast with others. It would mean the world to me. It also really helps with the vanity aspect of getting high profile guests on the show. So let's get into it. Today's guest, Reggie Lee, is an actor and a producer who has a wealthy list of credits such as Grimm, Prison Break, All Rise, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Fast and the Furious, The Dark Knight Rises, Tropic Thunder, American Dad, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Sweet Girl, Fresh Off the Boat, NCIS New Orleans, just to name a few. So in this wide-ranging chat, we chat about having a donut and an ice cream flavor named after Reggie, sensitivity, doing the work mentality, moving beyond adversity, Grimm, being boxed in, spirituality and mental health, energy, stillness, racism and bullying, plus self-care. Before we get into this epic chat, if you'd like to keep up to date with the latest info regarding the podcast, follow Funny in Failure on Instagram and Facebook. I often post short clips and other cool stuff to keep you in the loop for upcoming and previous episodes. Also, if you'd like to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram and Twitter under Michael_Kahan. That's Kahan with a K. And lastly, the podcast comes out every week, 5 p.m. Mondays, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other terrific episodes. I hope you enjoy. There were like 1,000 questions I wanted to, still want to ask you, but I think this could be probably a good way to start. I need to know how you have your own ice cream flavor named after you.
Well, God, I got lucky. I got really lucky with that. I didn't even know until someone posted it on Instagram. So it all started with a donut that was named after me.
I heard about this.
And it was, yeah. So I did a show called Grimm in Portland, Oregon. And this donut shop, Pip's Original Donuts. If you're in Portland, best donuts ever. Hot and fresh, best donuts ever. So, yeah, I know, me too. But he literally, the owner of the shop, Nate Snell, who is now a good friend. I mean, because why wouldn't they be a good friend after they named a donut after you? Seriously, tweeted and said, "Hey, do you mind if we name a donut after your character on Grimm? So we are going to put this on it. It's cinnamon sugar with Nutella and sea salt." And crazy. So I said, are you freaking kidding me? That's like winning a fucking Oscar.
Oh.
And they said, please name a donut after me. So they named it the Dirty Woo, because there was a part in the show where I got a disease called pica, and I just ate everything on the face of the planet. So they just slapped everything on there and called it the Dirty Woo. So nice. It became a very popular flavor. And after the show ended, he texted me and said, "Hey, people still get the Dirty Woo, but is it okay if we change it to the Reggie Lee?" And I was like, dude, even better.
Whoa. That is
Are you
awesome.
kidding? Yeah, very, very sweet. The sweetest people. And they are all about community, not competition. That's a big thing for them. So they said, they always kind of work with different kind of local shops in the area and try to do something together, like a collaboration. So they worked with Nico's ice cream shop and came up with the donut flavor on an ice cream.
Oh,
So that one's called the Reggie Lee. So listen, I had no idea. Apparently it's coming up this weekend, but
that's
I
so
know.
First of all, to get one flavor is like a dream come true, but two, not many people in the world have two flavors.
I can't believe that we started with this question. It's all downhill from here.
That's the nature of the podcast.
Yeah.
And when you get named, I'm just thinking but I would imagine that's like the most amazing thing. Like, yeah, you get recognized all the time, but when you got your own donut and ice cream, is this a moment of where you're like, I've made it? I've made it. Yeah.
Apparently, all my friends think so. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's like, it's crazy. First of all, I'm a foodie. Second of all, I love dessert.
Yep.
So, I can tell you that, like, when you become an actor, you kind of form a corporation and whatnot. And literally, the name of my corporation is Assaulted Caramel Productions Incorporated. because it was like, I used to play a lot of bad guys, and so I said, oh, so someone said, instead of salted caramel, why don't you call it Assaulted Caramel Productions Incorporated? So I was like, that sounds cool. I'm gonna use that. So it was genius. Yeah. I mean, it was funny because I think, of all the people on Grimm, I mean, there's certainly characters that were, like whatever. Everyone was so had their own quirky popularity, so they all were like, can I please be a donut? Can I please be a donut? But I said, just me. No.
We had
yes, an honor.
We had Sasha Royce on the podcast, and he talks about.
I saw that.
And
I saw that.
He is a legend in his own right, and he was talking about the Portland community and how amazing and embracing they were. And you don't really hear about that I don't normally hear about that from a TV show perspective, where they really embraced you. And I believe you were living there at that time, like 9 or 10 months of a year, and that became kind of home. So it's nice that they can honor you with these flavors.
Absolutely.
And I was just reflecting on this, chatting with Sasha, and I was thinking, when you're on a show what were you on for, about 6 seasons? 6
seasons, yeah.
Which is amazing, and that would have been unbelievable for you personally and professionally. But I was also thinking,
it's a rarity these days.
Yeah, very. Like a lot
for
of
a
shows
show to go on that. Yeah,
just 1 or 2 years. But it would also come with some. I'm not sure what the right word is, but when a show like that finishes, you kind of like starting again, if that makes sense, because you've been working.
Oh, that makes more sense than you will ever know.
Okay, go on. Tell me everything.
Oh my God, Michael, it was like we came back to LA and it was like we had never been here.
Oh, really?
We had never, the industry completely changed. Yeah, it was like we hadn't, at some points in your career, you think, oh, I'll just go back to LA, I'll get another show, I'll blah, blah, whatever. And it wasn't so. I mean, it was probably, it's been one of the hardest points, but toughest points in my life, coming back from doing that kind of show. And that kind of regular, I mean, for actors, series regular work is just, especially for an Asian American actor, where it's like being the doctor of the business, because it's like you actually have a steady job. So it's coming back and kind of floundering. We were floundering. I mean, I was floundering, and I would, we're such a tight knit cast, and we still are. Nice. So, and we were all kind of talking to each other, documenting whatever. But it was tough. It was tough psychologically. It was tough. I mean, what other tough is there, really? Once it hits you psychologically, it becomes something that you really need to address. At least for me, I already have, anxiety going through my veins as on a normal day-to-day basis. And then which was completely unexpected, because we were like, oh yeah, someone will snatch us up in a second. You've been on this show, but what happened is, and what happens is, especially when you leave Los Angeles, it's like, you're not really auditioning, you're not really doing this, you're not really doing that. No one really knows you anymore. They know you as that character. So they will peg you as that particular type of character. And that's what they want to see you as. And so it takes a little while for them to distance and see you as something different. So it was tough, man. I mean, it was really tough, a tough road.
It's so interesting. A few guests have brought that up when they're on the very few and lucky ones that have been on a show for that long, and how it's like the whole world they feel like the whole world's forgotten them. And then you're seen as this one particular, as you said, this one particular role, and it's hard to kind of get through that. But also the hardship, as you said, psychologically, not getting work. Like one example springs to mind. I don't know if you ever watched The Nanny, had Daniel Davis on, who played the butler. And he was typecast as that role moving forward. And that's like the biggest, exactly. And that's like the biggest, probably one of the biggest shows at the time. And Grimm was also a huge show. And he really struggled at that stage to really knock it off. So how did you kind of move forward from that? Because you'd think you're on this great show. You've got the fans on that show, from speaking with Sasha, are huge. You probably get amazing reception, and then you go back and it feels like you're starting again. How do you deal with the psychological component? Because there would be a lot of mind games.
Oh, for sure. Therapy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's
therapy.
The cure.
is it's not a cure-all. Therapy is not a cure-all. You have to do the work with that. But it really is taking stock of like what. I have to think about it for a second, because going back to that time, it really was like going into these auditions thinking you're hitting it out of the park, and then not getting a call. So those things, and then you're going, what am I doing wrong? What's happened? You're not doing anything wrong. I mean, there is evolution that certainly happens. And that's something that I learned later on. Thank God. I swear to God. I mean, I kid you not. It was a really rough time to try to get through, because it was, for my entire life, especially being Asian American, it's like, you fight for these things, you get them, and the word achieve comes to mind. So it's just like this whole thing about like achieving, which I think if it's channeled in an unhealthy sense, can become a really kind of empty habit.
Yeah.
It's empty. It's like success without happiness. And all you're doing is trying to do that. So I had to really figure out, talking to my therapist was like, Reggie, acting is not everything you are. You're defining yourself as only an actor. You have so many other interests. But at that point, because it was that thing that was eluding me, I was like, nope, I'm going to work. Something's got to happen. I've got to change it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. That's been my mindset from the time I said I wanted to be an actor, at age 10, was that. And I put my blinders on and I went at a time that Asian Americans really there was no business being in the business, because it was like there was no one around that looked like me. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to go. But working on that, it really was, I bring this up always, and there's an author that I went to that even my therapist and I talk about. His name is Joel Goldsmith, and he is kind of a precursor. And he was actually huge in Australia. He talks about Australia a lot, but he was a precursor, like Eckhart Tolle talks about him a lot. Marianne Williamson talks about him a lot. And he was like in the 50s and 60s, kind of the precursor to them. Ooh. So I started reading his books, and it was just a wealth of information, of just learning how to deal with what we all think is good and bad, because we've labeled it good and bad. But really, we've labeled it good and bad. But is it really good and bad? Because those two things are like, I've tried to not label anything anymore. And a lot of personal work. And I think for those people that, and I nowadays even more, like I keep going on a tangent because I have so much to say about this, but
it's great.
This generation is so much about mental health. This next generation coming up, I see it in my nieces. They're like, can I have someone to talk to? Can I blah, blah, blah? I need to talk to somebody. These are things that were taboo, back then. And with that kind of work, it's important that you do the work outside of that. So what I was doing was literally setting aside time in the morning to meditate, to journal, to all of the above. And still, I mean, Michael, it would take me to like, maybe noon, and then and then all the things would flood in, like emails and this and that, and all the bad things would come back in. And I'm like, damn it. It just lasted for that long and barely, but that's where the practice has to come through the day. And this will probably come later as one of your questions, but I do believe that things happen for a reason at every single particular time. And it is literally what they say about how you face those particular challenges at those times that you go, okay, I'm not going to die. No one died. I'm still here, and then you count your blessings. I mean, truly, I was on a freaking show for 6 years, and it's not like, people were offering me, like, they were like, here, do 2 episodes of this or do 2 episodes of that for this role, blah, 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 blah. Yet I still saw it as I'm not on another show yet.
I have 2,000 questions, and that was brilliant. There was no tangents that all tied in. I don't even know where to start. What I've kind of noticed early on, and everyone's got unique experiences, but there's kind of like that Hollywood game, like you're dangling off the carrot. You'll do this and then this will happen. Or you'll be on this show, or just keep on doing this, and then you'll be on this big hot movie or whatever it's called. And I've always seen there's no judgment, and I understand, or I sort of understand this game. It feels like it's a future projection of, if you do this, then this will happen. And it seems how do I phrase this? When you're thinking of the future, which is important, but when you're constantly living in the future, not so much the present, I just need this, it takes away from the happiness of where you are now. And that's kind of what I seem you're alluding to. But I've always felt from, like, speaking to everyone, there's this little game of the carrot's dangling. We're trying to catch the carrot, but that's not quite how it works. And, you mentioned some spiritual leaders, they're about a lot of things. Their philosophy is about living in the present moment. But that would be really hard, because with acting, for example, and we can talk about Grimm, you've got a secure job and you've been doing something for 6 years, and then you don't have any of that. And I know you're talking about the work, but that's really hard when your reality and your identity is kind of being shattered, and you might not necessarily have the money coming through. So what actually made you want to continue and move forward? And you've done a billion things since then, but how did you actually decide to mentally get there?
I really didn't think that. I never thought about not continuing. I mean, that wasn't ever in my mindset.
Nice.
It wasn't. I would continue, and maybe I'd expand and broaden. But it was never in my mindset not to continue. Because the only reason I say that is because I think when I go back to the basics and the basics of acting, what brought me joy in the first place, I feel like acting is one of those things, and maybe everything is like this, that there's no perfection. There's no, you've reached the ultimate, except maybe for Daniel Day-Lewis, but you've reached the pinnacle, and that's all there is to achieve in terms of the art. Once you feel that being in the moment as an actor, it's like you just chase that, and then you forget about it because of all the business shit. You forget about that, and you have to. And I had to really go back. I went back to class. I did all that stuff where I was like, let me go back to why I started this in the first place.
Oh, that's so
and
smart.
what you're talking about when you're talking about dangling the carrot, we're human beings. I mean, our egos are always going to want the next thing. You get one thing, it's going to be done. You're going to want the next thing. You're going to want the next thing. It's like, it's a bigger house, a bigger this. When does it ever end? It doesn't end. I mean, if you think about ego, that's what ego is. It's simply that we just keep feeding it. And the more we feed it, the more it wants. So, for me, it really was going back to the basics. I had to take a second because weirdly enough, we came right back in January here and it was pilot season. So all these pilot season, meaning like all the new shows. So it was like, we were going in for pilots and it was like crickets, crickets. And I think it literally was, there was, and the time that I tested on a pilot for Grimm, when you go in and you test for network, I was testing for 5 pilots at that time, and then suddenly after a show, it was crickets, after you get some notoriety and you have some sort of, you would think some sort of name value or, experience. That's when they're like, nope, nope. It's, but therein lies the work, which, man, I think almost, and I hate, I don't want to say I hate saying this, but I feel like the most fulfilling work is when you don't have shit and you start to do the work on yourself and you start to go, oh, I don't need shit. It's all here. So all these things are just added on, and that's way easier said than done, my friend. I mean, seriously, we are human beings with an ego.
Yeah.
So but I have to get quiet when all that noise is in my head. I have to go back to quiet because I can't even find myself in all that, in all the chasing.
Oh, okay. You're obviously you're a philosopher and a very spiritual guy. So you're speaking my language, which is great. But I'll nitpick on this, so then I'll discuss some of the other stuff, such as ego. I think it is genius. And you hear like sports stars, for example, when they're out of form or they're not playing well, they go back to the basics. And the basics, typically through my understanding, is like, why did they get there? What makes them happy? What makes them good at the profession that they're doing? And sometimes, like I do this all the time, so there's no judgment on anyone, but in every area of life, sometimes we need to come back and reevaluate, why are we doing this? And this is not about you, but sometimes I know I've done this.
I totally get it.
I know with other things that I've done where it has been a passion or a hobby or something I'm doing, and I've gone back and reevaluated it and realized I didn't have the joy or passion, so I moved on. Or it happens with relationships in all areas, and there's nothing wrong with sitting back and realizing, perhaps where I'm at in life I'm moving in a different direction. But what you did, which is phenomenal, is you went back, as I said, to the basics, and you realized, why did you actually want to do this? And you were thinking about the joy and the passion it brought. And then also you're talking about ego. I think it's really cool and awesome when someone who has been a professional actor and has thrived as a professional actor then goes back to acting classes, because that is also a way to kind of remove the ego in a sense, because as you said, you don't really arrive, you're a constant student. But I know that some people, not particularly actors, but when they've achieved a certain level of success, they can put their hand up and go, I don't need to learn anymore, I've done it. But you went the opposite way. And I find that really great, because you did it for you did it for your passion, and you did it to grow as well.
Yes. So I do believe, so much to say. I could talk to you forever actually about all this stuff, but
yeah,
it is
great.
It is, I just put myself back in a class, literally a Zoom class of all things, just this month.
Nice.
And I don't understand the idea that you don't, maybe for people that work are just like booked solid, but in between jobs, I'm always like, get me to a class.
Nice.
Get me somewhere where I can stretch, where I can keep the muscle working, because if it doesn't work, then it atrophies, which I've completely experienced as an actor. When you don't work the muscle, it's going to atrophy. And the more, it's just, it really is just learning how to pull from yourself, but you have everything right here. Everything is here, but if you don't listen to that, if you don't work that constantly, I mean, I would love to be the person that just like goes shopping and just goes to movies and whatever does, but I'm not. And once I started that journey, it's a really tough one, but I can't, there's no going back. And I don't know whether I don't think even if I chose to not dig deep as a person and as an artist, I don't think I could do it. I mean,
It's like the red pill,
I
blue
have to.
pill. Yeah.
I mean, I have to because as a person, I'm a highly sensitive person. As my therapist has told me, I'm a highly sensitive person, and that, it can hurt and it can be wonderful, and it's both those things. So yes, back to basics. The road was not easy to get to that place, nor was it easy when I got there, but it made me so much happier when I was like, oh, stop thinking about the product. Stop thinking about the product. Stop thinking about the product. Of course, we want to book a job. Of course, we want a series. Of course, we want a good audition. Of course, we want a great career. We want a house, all that stuff. But if I think about all that shit, I am not going to be anywhere in the scene that I'm doing.
Exactly.
So I'm not exactly what you said. We're not in the present. And it's so much of our lives have been, so much of society has gone, achieve. I mean, work, so you can get this and you can get that and you can get this, and then people forget about like the true happiness of what is that? I mean, get this, maybe a vacation somewhere, and that's expensive, but can you be happy if you just went out in your backyard? And you could. I bet you could. But it would take a lot of deconstruction. So
you mentioned the point, everything happens for a reason. And I'm sure there's another timeline that we haven't discussed. Finishing Grimm, you're having potentially, you come from working all the time to not working as much. Is that when you can appreciate everything happens for a reason? Because perhaps if you didn't go through that, you wouldn't have been able to uncover a lot of these insights that you've mentioned as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I can say that for the rest of my life, from the beginning of my life to now. I think if one action were out of place, I think things would have been different. So I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, I'm a firm believer in energy, all that kind of stuff. So in that regard, yes, I can appreciate it more. Even now, I think, I was on a series and blah, 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 whatever. It just happened last year. And now I'm not on that series, but I'm doing something else. There are things that you start to go, why did that happen? But our mind starts to look for the answer. Like we start to go, okay, what's the answer? But I think for me, the answer has always been the stillness, because when I'm calm and I'm still, I instinctively, whatever you would call it, if you're spiritual, I would say God or an energy or whatever. But if you would go, oh, that's what I want to do next. That's what I want to do versus that's what I should do. That's what I think everyone else should do or makes me want to do. It's like the business. It's like, how do I become an actor? How do I become a successful actor? There's no path.
Yeah, everyone's so
but
unique.
But the healthiness of our beings, our minds, our creative minds at the time that you're going through this very, in many ways, damaging business, for your heart and for your soul and for your ego, that's got to be first and foremost. And I've found that to be very true. It's like, if I don't take care of this, my acting is not gonna, I can't even access my acting.
Yeah,
So,
great. I've got 1,000 examples. I just use me as an example. When I'm doing screenwriting, for example, and if I'm so worried of how I'm going to sell it, is this commercially viable? All of that stuff. I've got all of this additional noise, which I call fake noise. It takes me completely away from the writing. And then I'm not even writing from me. And then you also mentioned the stillness. And I know that in the brief moments I've had in my life, when I'm meditating, for example, I've been in complete stillness. I get amazing insights for me. I know it might sound a bit crazy to some people. And I've also been able to write probably maybe 4 scripts from that, just purely from hitting that
Wow.
absolute stillness.
That is a perfect example.
Yeah. But it's also, I'm just speaking out loud because the Michael many years ago would have laughed at what I just said, but it's because I guess I also had a very busy mind as well. But when I was kind of not really forced, I kind of dabbled in it and I haven't stopped since. But meditating, for example, and as you said, there's other things that we also need to do. Meditation's amazing, but it's not the cure. Or as you said with therapy. But when I've been able to clear my mind, I realized that, as you said, nothing else, all that external noise isn't important. It's not even that real. It's about what's happening inside. And that is such a unique, and to me, kind of like the answer to the human inverted comma struggle, which I don't view it as a struggle. I view it as like a thriving mentality, that when we can hit that stillness, amazing things happen. And you just kind of move forward. You don't even think about it consciously. So it sounds like you've actively done this throughout your life, and it's kind of propelled you in so many wonderful directions as well.
I haven't actively, listen, I was brought up Catholic. So
Oh, really?
Catholic in a Catholic school, all Catholic boys school, all boys Catholic school. I mean, all this stuff. Yeah. I mean, the younger me would have probably looked at this and gone,
yeah, that's me.
What? Stillness? What are you
Yeah.
going to find in there? There's nothing there. Absolutely nothing there but air. And
Yeah.
it is until, and again, the thing is, it's like, wisdom is wasted on the young. It's true. It's like, seriously, it's like, man, I wish I would have known this earlier. I would have lived so much more peacefully, and that is what I crave every day of my life is peace. And before it was like excitement. I mean, there's still excitement within that, but it is just like, the anxiety and that anxiety is a big thing. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, as you said, everything happens for a reason. So then meaning that you needed to go through that so you could appreciate it now as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, and interestingly enough, year after year that I would go, oh God, finally, I feel good. I've found the way to get Zen, and then suddenly it's like something else happens. And then the next year you're like, yes, I learned more. It's just never ending. I mean, you think you've got that formula to becoming like completely peaceful and happy and whatnot. And things just keep coming your way to go, well, what's that about? Why is that coming my way? And, and it takes a little bit of time to go, ooh, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's
Nice.
not happening to me. It's making me respond. And how do I respond to that? I can respond in different choices. I can respond negatively or I can respond positively. So what am I going to pick? I mean, sometimes, that's inhuman to go, I'm just going to respond positively. No, you know what I do? I go, this is fucking shit. This hurts. And it does. And then after I go, it hurts. Then I'm like, okay, take a breath, step back, and let's get still. And let's see this for what it is. And then it's like, I always go to this space where it's like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, if you're thinking that that's horrible, go ahead. Think as far as you can. It's like, okay, so if that happens to you, then what? Then if that happens to you, then what? Then what? Then what? And then it's like, you finally get to a space where you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'd be fine. I'd move on. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to this, not going to that. I would rebuild. I would do whatever.
Nice.
So it's great, and then I go to this thing that Joel Goldsmith talks about, and it's 4 things that I say once I get, and then I go, why am I thinking that way? It's because of thoughts, appearances, world beliefs, mesmerism.
Ooh, mesmerism.
So I think of those things and you think, I mean, seriously, I mean, again, it's like we've labeled so many things as what they are. that's what we grow up to be, and that's what we grow up to think and realize, and we grow up starting to fear everything.
Mm.
You know, I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like familially, like my family, especially coming from the Philippines to here, it was all about everything was fear based. Don't do that because, don't do that because,
Yeah, same with
you
me.
know, don't do too much, don't rock the boat because this might happen to you, this might happen to you. And I'm just now starting to find who I am and what I want.
Oh, it's also interesting from the family side. My parents immigrated to Australia and South Africa. And that's my arena. So I don't know everyone else's arena, but you can see fears everywhere. But also, like, I'm avoiding the news right now, but you can see that everything's about fear. And you can't, and I know Hollywood kind of, from what I've heard, governs by fear as well. And it actually, when you're coming from that space, you can't necessarily see what's real and what's not real because your brain's not quite working in the best ways. Like, I know people do it very well, but when you're coming from a place of fear, it kind of dilutes everything. And what you're saying about all the work that you've been doing, which is amazing. And you said, what do you say? Meditating, yoga, journaling, all of that stuff amplifies. I don't even have the vocabulary to explain this, but I know that when I've done what you've done, I don't do the journaling and yoga as much anymore, which I need to. Everything kind of changes as well. And I would imagine that you would be, doesn't mean life's always perfect because that doesn't exist, but I would imagine that you're more emotionally resilient now. Doesn't mean you don't cry and all of that stuff doesn't happen, but you'd be a bit more resilient.
Yes, I have found myself more. It's interesting because when things hit me, I always think about a charge. I get a charge. If something feels just like, if I get anxious about something, something feels wonky or wrong or whatever, but for some reason it kind of hits me and then it kind of dissipates. And I go, oh, wow, that must be the work. You know, it's not like it's like gone. It's not gone, but you're able to see it in a different way where it's like, oh, that's not going to hurt me. I'm good. I'm okay. I'll move on. I'm able to move on, and it's joyous. I tell everyone, it's like, listen, even within all this work that I do on my psyche, on my soul, when shit comes up, it's like, it helps maybe like I'm talking about really bad stuff. It helps maybe like 30%, 30% of it doesn't feel as charged, but the rest of it is still there. Imagine if I didn't do any of that work. If I I would just be flailing, which I have before. It literally, an event led me, and I think this is when it started, an event led me to read a book called Conversations with God. I don't know if you've ever heard of Neil Donald Walsh, right?
I think I'm trying to see if I have it. I don't think I saw it again actually 2 days ago, no joke. And I'm like, oh, I haven't read that one. It's in my bookshelf. But anyway, go on. I have to read it.
So that's kind of what started me on this journey of, I'd always been interested in psychology. I think if I were not an actor, I'd be a psychologist.
Ooh.
But I've always been interested in that. But it really made me feel like, oh, there is a way for us to feel good, to feel better going through life. Not that I felt horrible, but when these things happened, it was like, it was shitty, man. I mean, I didn't know how to climb out. So it would be like, going to my parents or whatever, and I knew that time would help. But is there something actively that I could be doing that would help me? And when that started, it was just about helping myself. Then I was like, oh my God, there's a whole world here. There's a whole freaking like universe of goodness, and it literally, I mean, I always poo-pooed the thought of like, change your thoughts. If you change your thoughts. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Cause I just keep going back to the same thoughts. It's like, well, it takes a little bit of work, but I feel like with all the work that I've done, going to therapy and reading and meditating and all the stuff, that you start to apply to, that's kind of where I am now. It's kind of like the application of all this stuff moment to moment, because now that I've been doing it for so long, it's like every step I take, even talking to you here, is like, oh, where's that part of me here, and I feel like I don't think I would ever have been able to years ago say, I was an anxious person, or I had anxiety, or I went through shit, or I whatever, because for fear of like, oh my God, but I'm on a podcast, people are going to hear this and blah, 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 whatever. And it's like, I mean, it can go on and on, where it's like, and what's taught me differently is this generation is so open. And so, especially here in LA, and I see my nieces and she's so aware about the planet, about Earth, about sexuality, about fluidity of sexuality. It's like, oh yeah, their dads came to pick them up today, or their moms came to pick them up today. It just rolls off their tongues, and it doesn't mean a thing. And so she's like, yeah, she said, I think I know about like maybe, I think I'm probably friends with like 3 straight people in school. She's what about the rest of them? She's like, they're like gay, or they haven't decided, or whatever. It's like, I grew up in Ohio, where it's like, it's completely like middle America, completely Caucasian, very few Asians. And it was just like, even that was a struggle.
Of course.
So there's another thing, is that all that stuff about, I experienced a lot of racism in Ohio. So
that sucks.
I can't say that didn't, it informs me now. If I didn't go through that stuff, as shitty as it was, I wouldn't be the person I am now, and wanting to advocate and for bullying, for whatever, but it's a journey, man. It's a journey.
And credit to you, and not to glorify at all those experiences, but that we kind of have 2 choices in life. We can play the victim card, and that would be understandable going through that example you just gave, and hate the world and curse the world, but that's not really going to get anyone there. And I can say that from my high horse, but I've also experienced racism being Jewish. Or you can go the other way, which is tough. And as you said, it's tough. It's a journey. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs, but you can decide to not be the victim and actually want to do something about it, and not only work on yourself, but also being like a mentor. And I think I heard in maybe it was another interview, how you haven't really seen anyone look like you on screen. And so not only are you working on yourself, you're trying to be the best that you can, so you can inspire many other people. And I think that's crucial. And that actually changes the world as well, because you realize that you've got like I don't know if the word's higher purpose, but you're here to also help other people. It's not just helping Asians, it's helping the entire world, for example. Seeing that you are a normal person, which it's ridiculous that was either a thought that people, because, if whatever you see on screen, you think that's what normal life is, which is not the case. But credit to you going through bullying and racism, and then stepping above that, realizing that you don't need that, but you want to rise above it and be that mentor or that voice to people. What made you want to do that as well? Because sometimes we can shy away and we don't want to have to deal with it. And I understand completely why.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, becoming an advocate for things, it's interesting how that kind of falls, whether it's active or passive, it kind of falls, it comes to you in a way. I'm a man full of sayings and mantras, because I say them every morning.
Nice.
I don't chase, I attract. What belongs to me will simply find me. So,
we'll
literally, I've used so much of that pain to inform, and it's part of me. So for some reason, even though I don't like to use personal things when I work as an actor, I like to use the story. But how can you not use personal things? Because it's me playing this particular character, and it starts to become one at a certain point, and I've used so much of that. I've played so many bad guys, but I can tell you the rage comes easily. just the fucking, I'm going to kick your fucking ass comes pretty easily. And most of my friends are like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was in you. That was a part of you. You know, it's like you have liberty on screen because it's all pretend, but that's not me in real life. But there was an opportunity to do this. I think it was an interview for People magazine where it was like, you know, when all this stuff was happening here and a lot of Asian attacks were happening, you know, and I thought about it and they were like, will you write about this? And part of me was like, that was the part where I was like, do I mention my bullying? And then I went, why wouldn't I mention my bullying? I mean, really, I've seen my family go through it. I've seen my nieces go through it. I've seen, you know, my dad, we went to take a walk. I went to meet him and we went to take a walk. It was like, with my nieces, and he was like, I said, Dad, what is, he had like a little walking stick. I said, what is that? Are you okay? Are you having trouble walking? He said, it's just a little walk. It's like a curtain rod. I said, a curtain rod for what? He said, just in case.
Whoa.
And I thought, oh my God. Oh, it hurt my heart. I mean, here they are, like retired, right? Finally retired, working so hard as a physician, living, and then coronavirus comes up, so they can't really enjoy their retirement. And then they can't even go out. They can't go for a walk. They feel like they're just going to get beat up. You know, it's crazy. But the stuff I endured as a child, it really, I'd hate for anybody to go through that shit. But it literally, and listen, I completely forgive those people. I mean, one of them became my best friends when I was in 5th grade. He punched me in the stomach. And for some reason afterwards, he was like, it was like a week after he came up to me and said, I'm so sorry. Then we got to get along. We became best friends. I still don't know why at the age of, I don't know, 11. So, but you know, the advocacy is just because I am realizing now that if I can do something, why not do something? Why would you not do something? Seriously, if I reach, you know, I don't have like a gazillion million followers, you know, but if I can reach the people that I do have, then they can spread that out more, why not? If I can help my nieces grow up in a better world, why not? You know, where they're not bullied and they're able to think, oh, I can do that too. I can also be an actor. I can put my face on screen and that'll be okay. You know?
Yeah. I think that's crucial. And it is how we change the world to kind of normalize all of these things. And even bullying, for example, regardless of why you were being bullied, everyone can resonate with that because everyone's been bullied in their life. But also, I know I'm going on about this, but I think that's amazing. And, you know, it is scary to put your hand up and say that you've had these traumas or you're being bullied, and it's completely natural, but then to have that conversation and say, you know what, I've had that experience. It wasn't great, but it's helped me grow in a way, in a loving way. We don't want anyone to go through that, obviously, but then to share it with the world, because you're knowing that even if it hits one person, that is still amazing. And I think that's huge credit to you. And, you know, other guests on the podcast have talked about like depression, for example, or anxiety, and how initially, and I completely understand this, they were too scared to talk about it, but they know if they're going through it, someone else is going through it. And, you know, I think we're all a lot more connected than the world kind of allows us to be or shows us to be. And everyone's going through that. And I think it's really important. It's very scary though, to do that as well.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Now you're seeing sports stars, speaking of Naomi Osaka and who I want to win, but you know, when she took a step back and was just like, I can't, you know, when she didn't want to do press for the French Open because people ask her questions about why she lost. It's like, well, I lost because I didn't play well. So, and then they just keep badgering and asking more questions. It's like, well, some people are like, well, they signed up for that. They signed up to do that. No, they signed up to play that sport. You know, I mean, it's not like I signed up to do these interviews. I choose to do these interviews. I choose to go on social media. No one's going, you know, unless we're on a show and you're promoting publicity. But even then it's like, you know, questions are vetted and fielded. So it's mental health is a huge issue. And I'm glad, again, that we're all starting to come to a realization that it needs to be addressed. Just like you would medicate your heart, you would medicate your mind and your well-being. So yeah. And Michael, I swear I could probably talk to you forever, because I think we speak the same language.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's so funny because I can just imagine Sasha talking to you, because Sasha and I are it's like my best buddy.
Oh,
and
nice.
we speak the same language. We're I love him to death. His humor is out of this world. He's the funniest person I've ever.
I love him, and I don't say that lightly, and he's got amazing insights as well.
Yeah.
And I can rave about him for ages. But I was also just thinking from the egos. Oh, no, sorry. The mantra. Tell me about your mantra. I wrote, I don't chase, I attract. Is that what you say?
I don't chase. Who told me that? My niece.
Ooh,
my niece gave me that.
Wow.
We were talking about an issue. It's interesting. She and I get into very philosophical conversations at night, like FaceTime. And she's so cool. Very like aware, but I think we were talking about something about a role or people. Just talking about people liking you or working too hard to have someone like you or whatever. And, and she gave me that little mantra. I said, where'd you find that? She said, TikTok. I said, okay, exactly where you find everything these days. TikTok. Yeah. That's the answer for everything. So it was brilliant. And I said it to my therapist, and she's like, oh yeah, that one's been around for a while. But we chase so many things that we think we need to chase. Why are we even chasing? If you're really, again, easier said than done, because before we spoke today, I was talking to my acting coach about a particular role that
Harry Mastro George.
Harry was my acting teacher. I have a different coach. Teacher was like day-to-day class. And Harry was my teacher and still is my teacher for a very long time. But I use Sarah Mornell to coach, and she's fantastic, but she's also very like this. Like we talk about this stuff.
Nice.
And very spiritual. We were just talking about a role, and my choice is she's always like, well, what kind of roles do you want to play? What do you want to play? Versus like, well, okay, so I have to audition for this so I can get a job. She's like, but do you want to play that role? Do you want to play that role? And so we can't, again, talk about thinking and Hollywood forming this thing where it's like, hey, you got to keep chasing, you got to keep chasing, you got to keep chasing. When you step back and you go, oh, I've actually been working these past years since Grimm without really chasing, but how do I take that a step further and go, what do I really want out of my life? What do I want my life to look like? Something my therapist always asks, what do you want your life to look like? What do you represent? Question. If not now, when? So those are three questions. Those are three things, again, I say to myself in the morning. What do I want my life to look like? What do I represent? If not now, when? And it really sets me thinking, because it is like, am I living the life that I want to live? Am I living the life that I had always dreamed for myself? Listen, that's a, we can say, oh, I want to live in a big, huge mansion. But for me, it became more about ease and passion. Like I went back to the passion, and I was like, credit to my agent, who is always like, stuff that you don't want to go in for, stuff that you're not completely like, I want to do this, don't go in for it.
Oh,
don't audition for it. And I bless them, because they've stood by me with all that stuff. And I'm like, I say no to a lot of things, to a lot of auditions, because I'm like, I want to do that.
Nice.
I don't want to do that. But there are things, and it also kind of piggybacks onto, people have asked me questions about, well, what kind of role do you want to play? But it is like, yeah, I would love to play, a bad guy with a huge heart and soul that is just underneath, that's waiting to come out. And you just don't see that part ever, but you only see it in private. Things like that are like, you know, we were so relegated as Asian Americans. I swear to God, I was a gang leader at least 20 times at the start of my career.
Yeah, you've killed many people on screen.
I've killed so many people. I remember doing a film called Safe with Jason Statham, and I was just through all the shooting days. I was like, I don't know, I think the body count became like 35 that I killed in that movie, and I was like, wow, that's nuts.
That's crazy. I wrote down 2 points, and I've mentioned this on so many podcasts, but I've taken a break so I can bring it up again, and I know you'll like it. I had this lady on this podcast. She's an international best-selling author named Bronnie Ware, and her book is called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And so, long story short, she was a palliative care nurse. I highly recommend it. She was a palliative care nurse, and she would interview people that were of sound mind when they were dying, like what their regrets were. And the number one regret was, I wish I'd lived the life that I wanted to live and not the life I thought others wanted me to live. And when I read that, I'm like, oh, yeah. And it goes, yeah.
That's amazing.
I know.
I need to have that. Quote. What's the book again, Michael?
The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Okay.
I'll email you it afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
And
I would love that.
And I wish that I kind of had that book when I was growing up, but it also goes to what you were saying when you recite those things in the morning. Am I living my life? And I know that you've spoken about this before, and I know this is typical of immigrant parents, that you probably had the options of like I know that you were accepted into Harvard, and you probably had the options from your external environment being doctor, lawyer, engineer, and you chose to live your life, which is terrifying. I've done that as well. But that's still absolutely terrifying. And, you know, even with, you're talking about your agents. Agents are theoretically losing money if you don't get those roles that you don't want. And so you are still choosing you. And that's scary and terrifying. But if you didn't do that, you wouldn't be living your good life. And that would be kind of, you know, we were talking before about, I mentioned it, like the blue pill, the red pill. You can't go back on this journey. You can't go back. Sometimes we want to go back, but you can't. But it sounds like throughout your life, and I'm sure there's been like inverted commas hiccups, you've still decided to live your best life. And that's recognizing fear, seeing fear. And yeah, it can consume us and it's terrifying, but you've still done things for you despite all of that. And even with like bullying, like that's scary, but you decide to put your hand up and be an advocate, or racism and all of that stuff. I think that's phenomenal. I don't have a question, but just tell me your secrets.
No, I'll tell you something. I think I certainly have done things for myself. When I started this journey, you know, even if my parents said that's a hobby, that you can do that as a hobby. You know, I put my blinders on and I went. I mean, we were in Cleveland, Ohio, where it was like, you know, I took a bus to take dance classes like downtown. Nice. And I would like, whatever, I would audition for like theater. I would take acting classes, all of the above. I put my blinders on. That, I think, is something, and I don't think they regret it now, but my parents were always, my dad, driven. Incredibly driven individual. And I think that's kind of where I got my drive, where I was like, I'm going to work on this. I mean, I don't think he ever thought in a million years that I would say actor is a profession, but I just kept going, you know? But I've always been, and what I'm starting to realize now, because of how I grew up, tried to people please.
Yep.
And tried to go, you know, that's just always my thing, is just like, I have to make everyone happy. I make everyone happy. And then you forget about yourself, really. And then you're stressed out because you're trying to make everyone happy. Yeah. So that's now, and that's got to stop. And that's such work. And it's such a conscious decision to choose you. It really is. It's such a conscious decision to choose you, because if you haven't, your whole entire life, it's just automatically going to go into that mode. That's not because I've always enjoyed people. I love people. I love talking to people. As you can see, I can talk forever. So I can love talking to people, love being with people, all of the above. But there's also a point where it's like, is kind of the immigrant mentality where it's like, no, but we have to show them that we're good or we're good enough, which that is kind of like my entire downfall in life is that I think it's a lot of people since they never think they're good enough. We don't ever think we're good enough for anything,
It's very interesting because that is definitely universal as well, especially people pleasing. I know that I've been a class A people pleaser, but I realized that, there is a time to obviously go and help other people, which is what you're doing. And, but then the times of when are you hurting yourself? And that's been the image that springs to mind is like a seesaw. And I've had to consciously make strong decisions about me. And that's like, do I go out to this place? Do I not do things like small things which really build up kind of that muscle of people pleasing? But I know that it's been mine and probably almost everyone on this show's downfall as well. It's I don't know if it's like the artist curse or that also comes in with being an immigrant. There's so many factors of this people pleasing, but at the same time, it's coming from a good place because you want to help people. It's not saying don't help anyone and just only look after yourself. It's finding that balance of helping you. And then what's that saying? Like you need to have your glass full so you can help other people as well.
Correct. So if you don't love yourself, you can't go love other people.
Yeah.
And it is, I've had to consciously, literally like take a step back and almost be a hermit and be like, I need to go, complete self-care mode, self-care mode. And I never, through this time, I always thought that was the thing that I did in the morning, the meditation, but sometimes it takes a long period of time, especially in this quarantine where you're so affected with so many other compounding factors to your mental health. You've got to take a step back. I needed to take a step back, and I still do constantly, even more now than ever, to reach in and go, take care of yourself. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Versus what everyone else thinks that you should want.
Agreed.
It's all beautiful work. It really is. I mean, I really didn't know the meaning of self-care. And the thing is, it's interesting because all you see, especially now on social media, is like, you see people's highlight reels, and so I just quote my therapist the entire way through. She always says, you're comparing your insides to everybody else's highlight reel.
Yes.
Because that's what you see, but you don't see the inner workings. I mean, I talked to so many of my friends who are actors that are like, dude, I was so in the dumps, like for the past 2 weeks, I was depressed. I was like, blah, blah. I was like, oh, what? I would never have guessed that. Reach out or whatever, just reach out. We're all in this together. And I think part of what really made me so drawn to when I got the email to come on here and do this was I was like, funny in failure. I love that. I absolutely freaking love that because, oh my God, we all fail every day, constantly, and it really is. Semantics are so important when it comes to your well-being. It really is. The words you use make a difference. Good, bad, the word should. I've tried to take the word should out of my vocabulary.
Smart.
I've
said it a few times.
Failure, it's like, no one's failing here. We're learning. We're all learning. We're all learning how to feel better about ourselves, do a better job next time, whatever that may mean to us, better job. So kudos to you. Seriously, man. It's brilliant. I love it so much.
That warms my heart and kind of what I really appreciate it. Also kind of on the Insta reel, being an actor, for example. So you might see the person gets the dream Marvel role or whatever you want to call it. They might not have worked for a year. They may have been rejected 100 times. And you're right. On Instagram, no one posts their lows, or very occasionally do they post their lows, but you're seeing the best of people. And, great on the people for achieving their happiness, but it's not real. That's not what we go through all the time. Obviously, the goal is to experience more joy than not joy, and to experience joy for much longer.
Yeah.
I also heard you say somewhere that you have to enjoy the journey. Oh, no, maybe you said, I can't even remember. If you don't enjoy the journey, then you're not really going to enjoy the wins or the lows. But
I mean, I think it's all really the journey. I mean, I think everything's the journey. I mean, even getting a big thing, that's part of the journey.
Yep.
Because the next thing, evidence was like Grimm, part of the journey, phenomenal journey. Then you get to a point where it's like, oh shit, what happened? And it's like, oh, that's part of the journey. We're still learning. Thank God, because I found a deeper part of myself to explore as an actor. I found a deeper part of my being to explore as a human being. I grew in so many ways. I became more resilient, like you said, in so many ways.
Nice.
If I was just on this complete high all the time, I would never be able to, or even want to go discover those things. I'm just on this thing where it's, you're on a high. So it's like, well, why? Why do I need that? So it is all part of the process. I really, again, I said it before, I think this podcast is important for people to hear, because this is everyday people. I mean, if actors can be, have horrible days, which we do all the time, we're just regular people, playing pretend for a living. So it's everyone has horrible days, and we can all help each other through it just by knowing, sometimes it's what they say is misery loves company, where it's like, you finally know, it's like, oh my God, you felt like that too. Okay. I don't feel so bad. I feel like I don't feel so alone. None of us, I think, want to, yes, exactly. So, yeah.
It's also interesting, and you've made me realize this further, that there's no real growth in the comfort. We kind of grow in the discomfort as well. Sucks in the moment, but then with a bit of time, with a bit of clarity, you can start to see it as well. But you look like you've got something to share as well.
I just, I kind of being, my parents were such and are such amazing people. They will give you the shirt off their back. I mean,
nice.
They've helped so many people. And sometimes when you grow up like that, you appreciate it, but sometimes you don't know what happens when things go awry. You don't know what to do when things go awry. You don't have the tools, to do this, do that. And I kind of had to learn how to do that. And even now I still feel incredibly like a newbie learning all these things, but at least I have some tools in my toolkit, that I can pull out let me go back to my therapist. Here we go again. She said, when I first went to therapy, I was like, this is what I wanted to get to, Mike, is when she was like, yeah, dude, life's a bitch. Life is a bitch. And I was like, what do you mean? Life is not a bitch. It's fantastic. It's not, life's a bitch. Life's a bitch. And then you work from there, and I was like, that is crazy. No, it was like almost going, listen, we're all going to die. We're all going to work through stuff. We're all going to, I used to have my anxiety, oddly enough, being with a doctor, I had which I think a lot of people have. And I was just made aware of that, is like our hypochondriacs. But seriously, I had a bad case of it, to the point where, Michael, I feel, looking back, ruined a job for me.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, ruined a job for me. Yeah, I was doing a show for a very well-known, popular, wonderful man and producer. And, he had cast me in this role. It was a TV show, a kind of a superhero show. And during that time, I was going through the worst acid reflux in the world, and I had no idea why. I was like, for a year, I was nauseous. I couldn't sleep laying down in bed. I had to sleep upright until we finally found it. And, you know, they did the whole like endoscopy thing and whatnot. And of course, in the middle of like, I was in my trailer and I was like, oh, the results came in. Let me look at them. So I look at the results and, you know, there's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but there were some things that were like, you know, I mean, obviously from the reflux. So, but I was like, oh shit. And I felt, because I was a hypochondriac, I was like, oh no, this is really bad. This is really bad. I could not act worth shit. I'm telling you, when I went back in there, I was, and I think, like the next episode, I think I was off the show or whatever, but it was like a recurring role. But I literally go back to that and I go, man, I fucked up. But it's part of my journey. It's part of the journey. I can't change it. I can learn from it and go, okay, listen, we're all going to die. You know, there are things to enjoy, and maybe don't look at the results in the middle of a scene. Maybe don't do that.
But also on that, you're human. And although that sucks and, you know, it's a nice role, but I've just heard so many stories on and off the air where people have been like divas and the worst people, and there's been fighting or there's been creative conflict. You didn't have any of that. Yours was a very real situation for you as well. And people see that. And although it didn't go to plan, and people know, and I've heard and I've listened to everything, like you're a good guy and you're there to help people. That's not the thing that's going to like stop. Although it sucks, it would absolutely suck that happened. But it's not like it's not the end. As you said, you're not going to die. It's not like the final nail in the coffin.
Correct. Yeah. You're going to be okay. I think that's the best advice that's ever been given to me. At one point, I just didn't ever understand that. Sometimes I still don't understand it. What do you mean I'm going to be okay? I'm hurting. I am hurting. But you know what? We are going to be okay.
But even like what the lady said, life's a bitch. But it sounded like this is where people or you or whoever are at. Let's get to a stage where we don't need life to be a bitch. This is the base where we are now, but let's get to a point where we can move forward. And I think that's important to acknowledge as well, because life doesn't need to be the bitch, but it might be for where we are at that stage.
Yeah.
It's important. Yeah.
Yeah. She gave me a book or was, you know, a little homework here and there, but it was a book called Feeling Good. And it was like seriously this thick.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, feeling good. I mean, I understand it, but I mean, I do feel good. I just have these problems. Now I understand what it takes to feel good, because we're constantly faced with obstacles, you know, or what we deem are obstacles. And our mind, we're brought up in a way that for so long, I mean, the development is like you're a child. And so you're ingrained with all this stuff that you really didn't have a choice in ingraining yourself with.
Yep.
You know, and so it's like kind of deconstructing that and go, okay, I can feel good about that. There is an ease that I can have, you know, and ease does not mean lack of excitement. No, I mean, the complete opposite. It's like you'd probably have more excitement at that particular time because you'd appreciate more. Yeah, exactly. So you're right in that it's like, absolutely. We have tools. This podcast is a tool. It's a brilliant tool to let people know they're not alone and to go, oh God, there are people experiencing this and that's what they do. Maybe let me try that and see what that does for me, you know? And I love that. I love talking to just my friends, my nieces about all this stuff. So this is a joy to do this.
Thank you. It's awesome. And I really appreciate it. I wrote down this point at this earlier on in our chat about your acting teacher or coach, I've forgotten which one it was, about what do you want to play? And I think that's a really good question. But then at the same time, from listening to everyone on this podcast, Hollywood likes to box us in. And that can be really hard because you know you're capable of playing a lot more than perhaps the gatekeepers or the casting directors people see you as something. How do you kind of balance that out? Because I know, like, if you've got a particular look, like you're Asian, or I might have a Jewish look, for example, I might not necessarily be able to play the action man. I'm just rambling, but that's not how people might perceive me, even though I might view myself as that. How do you kind of deal with that side?
I think that there are, it's certainly lessens the amount of roles that are available because of choosing, but I really, what I look for is dimension in a character, whether it's, the second lead, third lead, fourth lead, fifth lead guy on top, whatever, just dimension, just depth, a way to grow. For instance, when this Jason Statham film was offered to me, the safe thing, and it was, another bad guy, and he was the bad guy of that particular film. And I said, oh, and then I read the script, and it was this man who, the reason it was called Safe was because he was a leader of the Triad gang in New York City. And they would crack safes all over New York City and steal. But a lot of these safes had numbers that were like pages long, right? In order to crack the safe. So they heard about this girl in China, that this young, 10-year-old that memorizes numbers like crazy. So we went to kidnap her, brought her to the US, trained her to help come with us and crack safes. A year later, she became like a daughter to me. And then it was that kind of thing where it was like, wait a minute, I don't want to endanger her. I want to be a father to her. I made that decision. I wanted to be a father to her. That kind of stuff is beautiful. It really is that stuff that makes me go, I want to do that. I want to find the reality of that. I want to find the dimension of that, and the joys and the pitfalls of all that. That's what I'm talking about. So, but again, it still narrows down a lot of things, right? How I've remedied that now is, I decided at a certain point after Grimm, I was like, well, people were always like, well, why don't you try to produce? So this guy came to me after I did an actors panel, and he had written a script, and he said, will you look at this? Will you think about playing this role? I said, oh, I love it. We're shopping it now. And he said, it's kind of Narcos meets Succession meets The Godfather, Filipino style. So, and I said, and then this role was just like, this is so good. And so I said, listen, I would love to do this if on one condition, if you let me help you produce this.
Amazing.
So, I got it to some of the Grimm people, and they loved it. And so now we're kind of out shopping it about. And talk about like putting it out into the universe. Then one of Sasha's best friends, Jane McLean Guerra, Filipina actress, Filipina Canadian. Sash texts me and says, hey, you met Jane before, but she'd really love to re-meet you again, blah, 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 whatever, over a Zoom call or something.
Cool. So
we did, and I spoke to Jane, and she's like, listen, I have all these scripts. She's a brilliant writer, and she and her husband just formed a banner, and we would love for you to help us be in whatever you want to be in, help us produce it.
Amazing.
And so I was like, okay. And she's written like this, she's written some really great stuff. So I balance it out with going, here's what I want to do with my life. I would like to pick and choose roles. If people come to me with an offer for something, I always take a look at it and go, why not? If you're just offering me this role, I'm going to go to, that's what's happening kind of right now with a film that's going to the Philippines, which I've never been back in like since I was 6.
Oh, wow.
No, 10.
Yep.
Yeah. So I balance it out because it's like when you start thinking that like auditions are all that there is. I mean, this is what I say about expanding, right? It's like now I'm just expanding and it feels good because it feels good. It feels like I'm actively doing something to live the life that I want to live. I'm creating the roles. I'm helping create the roles that I want to play. You know, whether it gets there or not, who knows? And hopefully it will. But the act of and the feeling that I myself can do that is a win.
A massive win. That's amazing. Yeah. And the foresight, you know, just from producing and giving, it's so smart on so many levels, but one where you can like play the role that you want to as well, because you're the one producing it and just seeing roles. And it would also change, I guess, kind of your view on acting as well, because you're seeing it through a different lens.
Yeah. And also it's like, it comes to the point, to your point too, of like, you know, when things aren't going exactly as, I mean, whatever goes exactly as planned, nothing, nothing goes exactly as planned. But at a point where you're like, why aren't these roles that I'm being asked to go in for, why are they not, I'm so not excited about them at all, at all, you know, few and far between. And it gets to the point where, because we're who we are, and because we're highly sensitive people. Well, I'm highly sensitive.
I am.
Okay, there you go. It starts to stay with you. It starts to stay there. You can no longer ignore that. It's like, why am I doing this? You know, this doesn't feel good. You know, you're talking about feeling good. And so it's like, well, what else? What can I do? What can I do about this? What can I do? I have so many connections by this point. You know, I never reach out. I never reach out. And why don't I reach out? You know, I see my friends doing it all the time. And let me try that. Let me see what, but the second I put that out, scripts came to me.
That's so yeah, you're a magnet.
The whole universe thing. It's the whole universe thing. It's like, it's what you put out there. And same thing with what, you know, this coach said about Reggie. If you keep saying yes to things where you're like, oh yeah, I guess I should do that. You're literally putting out the energy of exactly what you said you weren't going to do this year. You're putting out that you're not good enough for the other stuff, so you'll just do this. You're not, you know, that's what you're telling the universe. So the universe is going to come back to you with that particular thing. I truly believe.
Yeah, same.
I mean, I truly do.
You put out what
in terms of like, you really work on yourself, and then you don't chase, you attract.
You become this unbelievably strong magnet. And also, it's just so awesome that you found a writing team, in a sense that you guys help each other, and it sounds like you're on the same page. That's the dream. That is, congratulations. And
I didn't know you were a screenwriter. That's fantastic.
Yes, I've written a few scripts. I think I've written almost probably 5 or maybe 8, and we'll see how we go. But yeah, it's just awesome when you can find people that are in alignment with you as well, and hopefully, and you already are, create amazing and multiple things as well. So I'm very proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
What we're going to do to wrap up the podcast is to ask, we're going to do a rapid fire segment. So the first thing that springs to mind, but you can take time to think about it. I might ask some of the fan questions first.
Okay.
What was your favorite moment on Grimm?
When I got to turn into a monster.
Ooh. I'm not going to comment on them because I'll just derail them. So
I know, it's okay.
Favorite cast member on Grimm?
Oh man,
I know you're going to upset many people.
Oh God, I'm just gonna say Bree Turner.
Okay. Do you still do dancing, and what did you learn from backing up Prince?
That I could be sexy.
Nice.
In in a loincloth. Do I still dance? I sometimes still choreograph. I don't dance anymore.
Oh, favorite moment on Prison Break?
Ooh, a scene with William Fichtner. Oh, who you've had on?
Yeah, a legend as well.
With William Fichtner, where I was letting him out of jail.
I'm trying to remember that scene because I know you also had heaps of scenes with Paul Adelstein as well.
Oh yeah, who I love as well. Who I love, and you've also had on.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. I love hearing these stories as well. And the next question, which can also get you into trouble, but
shit.
Favorite actor on Prison Break?
Paul Adelstein.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Do you know how to cook, and if you do, what's your favorite Filipino food?
I just learned 2 Filipino dishes. The one that I love is called chicken tinola.
And what's involved in that?
So it's literally chicken, any kind of chicken, kind of diced up. There's it's called chayote squash. It's that squash that's diced up in there, onions, garlic, spinach, bok choy in a chicken broth.
Ooh, I want a recipe for that.
And fish sauce. You know, Filipinos use fish sauce like crazy.
I've heard that. What was your favorite moment or funniest moment on Tropic Thunder, if anything springs to mind?
I would have to say Robert Downey Jr. speaking Mandarin and cracking up during many takes.
Oh, really?
Of it. Yeah, because he's right there, dude. And it's just there. And then there's, we went there I have to do one more though. There's one more where it's like we all went there for rehearsal like a month early, and we were scoping out the scene of like the wherever we made drugs. And Jack Black was with us. And it was, we were like, they were like, oh, do you know how you're going to do that scene? He's like, dude, however it's funniest, that's how I'm going to do it.
Oh, nice.
And he is just a crack up. He is a crack up. Those are my 2 favorite moments.
How do you, when you see a cast like that of like just such heavyweights, and I know that you've had many other experiences like that, do you get starstruck?
I mean, you have to. I can't say I'm really as starstruck as I would say, other people, because I'm so focused on like, fuck, if I don't do the work, I got to be here. The table read, when you do a table read before you go out and actually do it, the table read for Tropic Thunder was ridiculous. I mean, with Robert there, Jack there, Tom Cruise there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Matthew McConaughey. I mean, it was just jam packed, and Ben. So crazy. And Ben hired me for that because he loved Prison Break.
Oh, that's so cool. That's amazing. I'd love to be a fly on the wall for something like that. That's amazing. Last fan question.
Yes.
An actor that most surprised you. It doesn't have to be just because of acting. It can be as a person.
It always surprises an actor that surprised me. Listen, comedians always surprise me when they do serious roles because they're so good at it. 2 that come to mind are Whoopi Goldberg and Melissa McCarthy. Both actors that are like completely hilarious. Then they do this small dramatic film and they knock it out of the park.
Very nice. Now we're going to do some of my questions to wrap up the podcast.
Okay.
What makes you happy?
Ice cream.
Oh, favorite flavor? Besides your
caramel.
flavor? Oh,
salted caramel.
Nice.
Yeah.
Biggest pet peeve?
Inconsideration.
If you were on Tinder, what would your bio say about you?
I haven't even looked on there, so I don't even know what they say. Nice, funny, deep, individual, seeking, same.
I like that. What is the funniest thing that's ever happened to you performing?
I I was doing a stage show at a theme park and I did a kick and I fell on my ass. And it was just me there. I've never done that. I've seen it happen before, but I've never done that. And I was like, what the fuck do I do now? It was so, you know how quick you get up from something like that? It's just like, nope, didn't happen.
And how did you stay grounded and present in the moment after that?
I had no choice. I had to finish the rest of it. It was a number called Steam Heat. If you know that Bob Fosse number, yeah. It was just like a woman singing and two guys backing her up dancing.
Oh, I'm glad that you can laugh about it now.
Oh, yeah.
If you could have any superhero power in the world, what would it be and why?
Be anywhere at any time because I love to travel.
What would you do if you knew you could not fail?
I would take more risks because they wouldn't be risks at that particular point. I'd be me more.
What are you most proud of?
My personal growth, my ability to, even though it'll never be done, my ability to be able to take something that was a problem before and diminish it and move on.
I said I wouldn't comment on them, but we're going to play like clap music. That's awesome.
I got a clap from Michael.
Any advice you'd like to give people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
If not now, when? Because seriously, it's, and I'm older now, so I can say that because it's like, I wish I would have done that earlier on. You know, all these things where you think, I'll do that later, I'll do that later, I'll do that later. Do it now. You know, there's no such thing as failure. There's only like part of your journey.
Another clap. If you could go back into a time when you were first starting out, what advice would you give yourself and why?
I would say stay true to who I am versus try to be what you think you should be.
This is the last question before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you. What is the one question I should have asked you?
Oh, gosh. What does love look like to you?
Ooh, go on. And how would you respond to that?
No, but you should have asked me that. You're not going to ask me that.
So I can't ask you that? Okay. If you don't want to answer it, that's...
No, I say love is sticking around and working at it.
Very nice. Before we go, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you, and just, yeah, all of that cool stuff?
I have all of the above. I have an Instagram at MrReggieLee, MrReggieLee. Same thing for Twitter, same handle. And there's also a Facebook page, so they can go on there.
We'll upload it in the episode notes so people can check it out.
Absolutely. And I'm happy I always respond. So come over and let's have a chat.
Amazing. You are a legend. I love your insights and your empathy. I could ramble about you we could speak for many more hours. So when we do
Michael, we could speak for many, many more hours. Part 2, plus I'm coming to Australia.
Oh, very nice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you so much.
So great. So great talking to you. Beyond great. Had so much fun.
Thank you.
This is my jam. This is my kind of talk. So I appreciate it.
Wow. I really love Reggie's take on going back to the basics. He explains how the road he has traveled was not an easy one at times. However, going through the challenges has made him a better, more insightful, and happier human. He encourages us to stop thinking just about the product or the end goal, but rather to focus on the journey. He believes that's where we can experience the joy of life, in the now. I also love when Reggie was coming off Grimm and how he was perhaps finding it challenging to reinsert himself back into the game, but what did he do? He went back to class to focus on the learning aspects of his craft, and in turn, this helped him to rediscover his passions. He says by participating in acting classes, this gave him the space to realize what made him smile and what his strengths are. In addition, it allowed him to be more grounded and focused, instead of worrying about all the externals, which are often out of our control. So I'll leave you with these 3 crucial life questions which Reggie asks himself every day. What do I want my life to look like? What do I represent? If not now, when? If you like this episode, share it around, tell your mates. It really helps grow the podcast and spread the positivity and love. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.